What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Exit Light, a podcast about the Hokies, for the Hokies, by some Hokies. My name is Jackson Tate, and I am once again joined by my friends and co-hosts, Zach Ellis, Collin Rudis, and Zach DeGrauwe. We're excited to be behind the mics once again as we talk about everything Hokie sports, especially our huge win against NC State in women's basketball, as well as a big start to the season for Virginia Tech softball. Stick around as we recap our favorite moments from the weekend and hang around a little longer as we debate Mike Young's status on the hot seat as the head coach of the Hokies.
Before we get into everything, we all want to give a huge shout out to Taylor Soul and Kiana Traylor. They both got camp invites for the Minnesota Lynx, so shout out to them. They were both huge contributors to the Final Four team last year, so we love to see the hard work pay off. And with that being said, women's basketball had a huge win Thursday night down in Raleigh. They beat NC State 72-61. Jackson, you were there. Can you tell us a little bit about the atmosphere and how the game went down?
Yeah, the atmosphere was nuts in Reynolds Coliseum. I got off work a little bit early on Thursday, and I looked at tickets, and I saw one for cheap, so I decided to make the 3-hour drive from Chesapeake down to Raleigh. Got there right around 7 o'clock and walked pretty much right into the arena. It is not as big as Castle. It's pretty small, pretty intimate, but dang, they get loud. It was electric from the tip off. The fans there were awesome. There were so many nice people there at NC State, but the loudness really didn't sustain itself throughout the course of the night because our Hokies took care of business, knocking off number 3 NC State for their second top 3 win of the season. We talked about key points on our first episode, and we pretty much laid out 5 big key points on how Virginia Tech could win the game. And sure enough, all 5 of those key points turned out to be true. And so that's definitely something that we were happy to see. But you guys can talk about the rest.
So one of our keys was getting Tilly and Kayla going from 3, as they've been doing so excellent the past, what it seems about month and a half. Both of them were 4 from 10 from 3-point field goal. Very big shots, needed them all. Collin, if you wanted to talk about kind of the rebounds that they had going on there, that'd be those were also pretty big.
Tech out rebounded NC State 48-31 with 15 offensive rebounds. Liz had 13 herself. Even Georgia 8 rebounds. Tilly 7, and then there was a real big point there. Third quarter, I think it was, where it was 3 missed offensive rebound, another 3 missed offensive rebound, and then bang. And then I'll let Jackson tell that because obviously he was there, so he can kind of explain what that did to the atmosphere.
Yeah, so the big moment in the game, it was right in the middle of right at the end of the second quarter, about 2 minutes left, and they're shooting directly at me. I'm sitting behind the basket, and from that point in the game, it was kind of like back and forth. It was they were trading baskets. It was 3 for 3, 3 for 3. They were going like Isaiah James, Georgia. Everybody's hitting shots, and it seemed like that. The gap was kind of stagnant. It seemed like Tech was down. They were tied, or they were down by 3 or down by 2. It was in that range the entire time. And they come down the floor. They're down by 2, and Kayla shoots a 3. She misses. We get an offensive rebound. They pass the ball out to Georgia. She misses. They get an offensive rebound. I think both of them were by Clara Strack. And
yeah, they both were.
And then, sure enough, Claire gets the rebound. They pass it. The ball gets kicked back out to Kayla. And, Kayla shoots that typical rainbow shot. And so it feels like it's up in the air forever. And it's just taking forever to hit. And it goes in. And I remember just being in the stands, just going, boom, and celebrating. And, the NC State fans are looking at me like, what is this dude doing? Like, what is this kid on? But sure enough, that was the turning point in the game. It seemed like from that point, it kind of like demoralized NC State. Like from that point forward, Tech never trailed. From that point forward, they dominated on the offensive glass. And that seemed like to me that was the turning point to lead us to getting our victory.
Yeah, there was another point in the third quarter when NC State, they kind of made a run. It actually got down to 6, I think. And then again, you mentioned Clara. She grabbed a huge offensive rebound. She kicked out Tilly. Tilly banged in the 3 to take the lead back to 9. And really from that point on, right after that, she had a huge block. And then there was that transition play where Tilly made the extra pass to Carly Wenzel in the corner, and she hit that three, and that was just a huge moment. And then talking about Kayla, her defense, it gets underestimated. People don't really pay attention because she's always picking up fouls. But there was one point that really closed out the game. There's 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and I don't remember who it was for them, but it was at the top of the key, and they were just constantly trying to screen her, and she kept fighting through it every time. And then we got the stop, and Georgia went down, passed it to Liz. She got her 10th assist, and that's what really sealed the win. That was like the closing moment, and just watching her defense right there was amazing.
Yeah, something that was fun to watch is in our first episode we noted that we needed to keep Sanaya Rivers in check, and Kayla with her defense did that. Sanaya only had 12 points, and it seemed like in January, she just couldn't miss, and it seemed like Kayla had her just kind of off of her typical game. To be fair, though, a lot of that slack that Sanaya was kind of leaving was picked up by Isaiah James in the beginning of the game. I think the first 9 points on either side were both scored by Liz Kitley and Isaiah James. And that's huge for them. NC State needs multiple contributors in order to play well. And truthfully, they got that from Isaiah James on Thursday night. She could not miss in the first half. But again, one of those testaments to the defense is that Kayla, Georgia, Matilda Eck, anybody who stepped on the floor, Carly Wenzel, they locked them down in the second half. Isaiah James scored 2 points in the second half after having 17 in the first. Sanaya Rivers only scored 12 in the entire game, and a fair amount of those, as well as Madison Hayes, were kind of in garbage time when Tech was just trying to maintain the lead and draw out possessions and everything. And truthfully, I mean, we talk about hitting threes, we talk about the rebounding, but the defense on NC State Stars is really the big sticking point for me.
Yeah, I think the big thing there is Sanaya Rivers. Her drive is amazing. She gets that drive to the bucket or that little mid-range pull-up. She's money. But we really forced her to shoot threes for the rest of the game, and that's not really her game from everything I've watched. So watching that defense, it's been a talking point that defense isn't really what they do well, but they played a really good defensive game against a really good team.
Yeah, and so we talk about the key points and how we kind of nailed it in our first episode. How we kind of identified the things that we needed to do to win, and they did it. We talked about the atmosphere that you're playing in Raleigh, in a place that is amongst the hardest places to play in the country due to its size and its energy, and the fan base, the NC State fan base, they're rabid, they're nuts. And we came in there and took care of business for not just the first time, not the second time, but the fourth time in a row, beating NC State, including the second time we've beat a top 3 team this year, both obviously being the Wolfpack. We talk about implications, though. I mean, obviously, when you have a matchup between two ranked teams, it's obviously going to be a big game. But in the ACC standings, that was for first place. NC State was half a game behind us going into Thursday night's game, and we took care of business, won the game, and now with Louisville losing again Sunday, Virginia Tech is now holding a game and a half advantage in the ACC with 4, 5, 6 games left to play in the regular season. It's huge for us.
The team behind them is Syracuse, who they already beat, so they have the tiebreak on them as well.
Yep, and we're going to talk in a little bit about the teams that we have coming up. We got a bunch of big games in the next couple of weeks, but we sit in a very good spot. It's kind of like you control your destiny. That you just win games and you're going to win the ACC. You're going to have the double bye. We're in truthfully, we were the 3rd seed last year. Were we the 3rd? Yeah, so
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think off the top of my head, I believe we were the 3rd seed. I think Notre Dame had the 1st seed, and I think Duke was 2. And we took care of business in the ACC tournament. This time around, the biggest thing you want is that double bye. And if you have the double bye, especially in the gauntlet that is the ACC, you want to play less games in the tournament, obviously. But let's talk a little bit about something that has Hokie Nation up in arms on social media. We're recording this on Monday night, about 12 o'clock today. The AP poll dropped, and you had the Hokies coming off of a big win on the road against number 3 in the country and another win against Boston College, and we are ranked 12.
Well, I think there's a couple points. I think there's different ways that people can look at this. And Jackson, I think you made a great point. I think if you want to look at it from a different thing, kind of what we said last week, right now for women's basketball, ACC is not easy. It's really tense. You got a lot of different teams playing a lot of different forms of basketball, but it's all good basketball, So you got like how many teams today in the top 25? Was it Notre Dame, Louisville, NC State, Virginia Tech, and was there a fifth or was it just 4?
I think Syracuse might have been in there.
Syracuse, yeah, Syracuse. Okay, so you got some ranked teams in the conference. So just like we said last week, every game that you win, it doesn't matter if it's against the first place team, second place, last place, doesn't matter. Every win in the ACC is huge. So the fact that Tech just started off, beat NC State and Boston College, those are 2 big games. They needed those games, and it just worked out that Syracuse beat Louisville. As Jackson noted, we now have a game and a half lead, so that's huge. Jackson made a great point. We want to double bye. So I think that despite 12, you have to look at the positive side of this is that we do control our own destiny. And as long as we just keep winning and we get through this next stretch against Notre Dame and Louisville and Duke, I think you're going to find that we'll just keep moving up. So I wouldn't be like, well, obviously, you want to be ranked higher, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's the end of the world. As long as we keep winning, everything will be okay. The double bye is the most important, but yes, we should be ranked probably up higher than Oregon State at 11. But, I just think that it's really good that they got these 2 crucial wins and we're top of the ACC. So, what more can you ask for right now at this point?
I like how you're the one that brought that up because, Zach, you have been known to worry the most about rankings and all this stuff, during the game, constantly asking, are we good? Are we good? And, the ACC is really good this year, as you mentioned. And with our schedule being so weird, how we only play Syracuse once and it's at their place, only play Louisville once at their place, and only play Notre Dame once, again, on the road. With them being ranked, those are huge opportunities for this team. And so it really brings up the point of just relax. It'll play itself out. Last year we lost 4 games. We were 1 seed. Right now, we lost 4 games. You can afford to lose one, and you can still get that top 4 seed with how good women's basketball has been this year.
Yeah, something that I find to be interesting, just revolving the AP poll, it really feels to me like some of these voters need to learn ball because, I guess the argument is like whether or not you are talking about like the most recent week or you're talking about like the most recent sample size of games or you're talking about the entire season. And obviously when it comes down to selection time in March, you're going to be talking about who has the best resume across the entire season. When you look at Virginia Tech, our 2 big losses were against Iowa and LSU. Those teams are both ranked in the top 15. Those teams are, they were ranked in the top, 5 to start the season. You talk about Florida State, which was not a great game, but you had that one girl for Florida State who just couldn't miss, as well as, the refs absolutely sold 2 calls in 2 possessions back to back to pretty much take us out of the game. And granted, voters don't pay attention to the calls that refs do or do not make. And then you go to game number 4 and, Georgia gets, elbowed in the head going for a loose ball and she's out for the game, and obviously at that point we weren't playing great. We were up, by about, 11 early, but, Duke was coming back, but still, it's a big loss for a key leader for our team. And truthfully, like, I mean, that's the 4 games that they're looking at and keeping us down to 12. And I know you guys are going to talk about this too, because we've talked a little bit about it, but you have North Carolina State, who, their 2 big wins are Colorado early in the season and Connecticut early in the season. And now you talk about, if you're going to keep the sample or the season long sample size argument that they're using for us, Colorado and UConn are both, they're struggling right now. They're both losing games, and I don't, I won't claim to know basketball like some of these people that write stories for a living, but I do watch a lot. We all watch a lot. We all know what's going on in and out of the country. We see like the stuff that's going on in different conferences, and I don't understand how NC State is ranked above us after we beat them twice.
Keep in mind that Oregon State also just jumped us because they beat Colorado as well.
Yeah.
6 spots at that. I think they were 17. They jumped 6 spots, and what was Colorado ranked?
They were 4.
They were 4 at the time.
So they were 4. They were 4. NC State was 3. It was a road game at that. And yet Oregon State is making this small run, which, I mean, credit to them. I mean, it's not a small win by any means, but when you look at 2 resumes, I mean.
And there, so Oregon State beat Colorado twice. Colorado is ranked 3 and 4. Tech has beat NC State twice, ranked 3 both times. How are you going to – there's no argument that's going to change my mind about why Oregon State should even be over Tech right now.
See, but it's also when UNC was ranked last weekend, they traveled to UNC, beat them, knocked them out of the rankings, come back home, get ready again, go back on the road to North Carolina, take them out, and then you come to here against a tougher Boston College team at that, if you will, and they take care of business as they should, and you're still moving up a couple spots, but then you have Oregon State just kind of jump over everybody almost at that.
That Boston College game is a typical trap game, as that's in the middle of a gauntlet. Because you're at UNC, you come home for Boston College, you're at UNC, then you're at NC State, then you come home for Boston College, then you play Duke, and then Louisville. Like, that's in the middle of a gauntlet.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a gauntlet, and truthfully, there's probably 30, 35 teams that could be ranked at any given moment. You talk about the 6 that are ranked from the ACC right now. That doesn't include North Carolina, who has spent most of the season ranked, as well as Duke, who is now playing pretty decent basketball. And both of those teams are receiving votes. And you obviously, the argument is the argument. You could argue it any different ways. The way I see it, we just won one of the biggest games in program history, at least in the regular season, on the road in one of the toughest places to play by 11. You have a team that's ranked lower than us, beating a team that's ranked lower than the team that we beat by less points in an easier place to play without a basketball culture. And somehow that team is vaulted ahead of us. And, I understand that the Pac-12 has these teams. They have Stanford, USC, UCLA. Utah's been good this year. Oregon State, Colorado. I understand that that's a gauntlet for these West Coast teams, but what's the difference between the 15 teams that we have to play each year? I mean, we just took care of business against the number 3 team in the country, came back and struggled against Boston College. I think that's just a testament to the ACC. So I don't understand the logic behind keeping us down at 12. But I think that Hokie Nation, people on social media, are the ones that are a little bit more upset than the girls are. I think, and you guys can hit on this real fast, but at this time last year, we were kind of in the same spot. We had those tough losses against Notre Dame. We lost to Miami and Clemson last year, both on the road. And, that kind of held us back for a while. And then we lost to Duke. And from that Duke loss, we didn't lose again until we lost in April. So I can't imagine that Coach Brooks, Georgia Liz, and the girls are looking at the number that's going to sit beside our name on the broadcast, thinking that it's a problem. I think they're just going to go out and take care of business like they have been.
I feel like as much as it sucks, it's almost a good thing. Keep sleeping on the Hokies.
Yeah.
Keep adding fuel to that fire. Keep giving them a reason to go be great. Keep sleeping on them.
Here's what I don't understand. So Iowa, they just lost on the road to an unranked team, right? They were number 2 in the country, and they dropped to 4. So they dropped 2 spots for losing to an unranked team. Now, if we were to lose that game to NC State, how far do you think they drop us? Because that's not an unranked team. That's the number 3 team in the country. And
I think we drop at least 4.
I guarantee we drop more than 2 spots. And that's just, yeah, Caitlin Clark's amazing, but she gets so much hype that they drop 2 spots for losing to an unranked team.
I think that
And
I think you just
Go ahead.
kind of hit it on the head there. It depends on. It's kind of. I feel weird saying this, but it's like a sports media bias in a way. You see that these teams that have these big basketball cultures and that they're typically in the media, they're typically at the top of the rankings. They lose, and people are like, "Oh well, LSU's still good. LSU's still good. Iowa's still good. They're all popular teams. Even NC State. I mean, NC State. Louisville lost twice last week, and they went from 16 to like 18. Like they're solidly in the top 20. So I think it's just maybe a little bit of they think that Virginia Tech's run last year was a fluke, that we're still not cemented amongst the big dogs and in the landscape that is women's college basketball. And that's frustrating, but like Collin said, I think it's just a chip on the shoulder that's going to help them, moving forward.
Yeah, I do like how you brought up the point of the girls don't care. I mean, they don't look ahead in the schedule. If you watch the press conference after, I believe it was the Boston College one, you hear Georgia say, "We just want to go 1-0," and that epitomizes Virginia Tech. You see, like football, it's always win the game, go 1-0, don't look ahead. Because when you look ahead, that's when the trap games come. That's when you get upset. And you see them really focusing on that one game and not really, they struggled to shoot a little bit against Boston College, but they found it.
Yeah, so, we could talk all day about why Hokie Nation is upset at the results of the AP poll this week. But we're going to very quickly move on to something else that has the people in Blacksburg up in arms, and that is our game against Boston College, and specifically the performance of the referees in that game. Very quickly, we'll talk about how Virginia Tech got another ACC win in a game coming off of a huge one, which is, they didn't shoot great, they didn't play great, but they got the win, and they felt like they were in control the entire time. But what I really want to talk about are these refs, because the performance of the refs is really going to determine the success of our team. And I don't mean that that we have to rely on calls like some superstars, but the reason we lost against Duke last year and even this year is because of how physical they played. The reason that Boston College kept the game so close is because they were getting away with a lot. And I can count Clemson, Miami. Last year, there's so many, LSU. The game we lost in Dallas. If the refs let them get away with fouls on Liz, and they're letting them play a little bit more bully ball, it's something that we struggle with. So let's talk about these refs.
Yeah, I don't understand. So when you watch LSU play, they get the ball to Angel Reese. She throws a little elbow, and then she flops and gets a call. And then you go watch Liz Kitley play, and you see at the end of the game the huge knot on her forehead. There was no foul on the play that calls that. And I don't know if it's because she's not as flashy of a person. She doesn't do all the antics. She doesn't call people too small. She just plays basketball. And I don't know if that's why she doesn't get the calls or what, but it's getting ridiculous. And there was one point in the game, I can't remember, I think it was third quarter. Boston College, the ball's going out of bounds. And this girl takes 3 steps out of bounds and then saves the ball. And Zach, you and I are both there. Everyone in the crowd is just pointing at it. Like it was not, it wasn't hidden. It was very obvious that she did not reestablish herself and she was way out of bounds. And the ref's standing right there. And
Well,
then
you see Georgia at the end. You see Georgia kind of stop because she assumed that the ref was
yeah,
going to call that, and she looked at the ref and asked why that wasn't out, and then Boston College is just gone. But she had like their whole
exactly.
foot out.
Like it was obvious. And then the big thing at the end of the game too is ridiculous. Collin, I'll let you talk about this when the Kayla foul at the end. That this was mind-boggling play. One of them that I've ever seen.
I don't get how do you get hurt? Your team has possession, which if there's somebody on your team, there's an injured player on the floor on your team, and you have possession of the ball, it's supposed to be blown dead. But then, not only does the whistle not get blown, but then the girl with the ball runs into Kayla, and Kayla gets called for the foul. Like, in what world does that make sense? This girl is on the floor injured. The Boston College girl with the ball runs into her, and Kayla gets called for the foul. Like that, 0 sense.
I don't think that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought it was the Hokies trying to beat the press, and Kayla was on the essentially the free throw line on the side they're trying to advance it off of, and Kayla was sitting there tending to her ankle and her shoe, and the girl from Boston College is, instead of going around her, almost like runs into her and almost knees her in the head, which could have like done a lot more damage, and gratefully it didn't. Um, but they blow the whistle obviously, and they convene. And after convening for like 30 seconds, they call it a foul on Kayla. And it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and it's like you talk about legal guarding position, right? And as defined by the basketball rule book, legal guarding position is you have your torso pointed towards the ball carrier, and both feet are planted against the ground. So I understand. You've seen it happen where like a player trips up another player after being knocked over. They can call a foul. We've seen it happen. It's happened for Tech, against Tech, whatever. But the biggest problem with this is that these refs are blind. They're not paying attention. They have no situational awareness to the fact that we have a girl in pain in the middle of the floor, and I don't know how they missed that. It's not like the whole play was like on the other side of the court, Like it's all happening in the same area, and they had plenty of time to blow it dead. Tech had clear possession. It wasn't like it wasn't like there was any pressure on the ball. Georgia was just running away from everybody. And and the girl runs through Kayla, and they call a foul on her. And I don't understand that. I don't understand.
What I don't
Yeah.
Well, I need to point out the game was pretty much over at that point. Like Boston
yeah, I think
College,
there was 30
come
seconds
back.
left in the game then.
It was pointless.
Yeah,
Like,
and
blow the
what I don't
whistle and let's go get
understand,
off the floor.
they call it offensive. Like
Yeah.
you'll see it if someone trips and they reach and they grab them when someone's shooting. Georgia has the ball, and Kayla's not like she doesn't try and hold up her hands or anything. She's holding her ankle, and the girl runs her over. I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know if you guys saw any of this, but in Coach Brooks' press conference with Georgia and Liz, they were getting questions about the refs and the physicality. But the thing that kind of got my brain going was that in Kenny's opening statement, he came out and said, like, obviously we didn't play well, and we're gonna own that, and pin that as the reason that this game was closer. But we can't have these girls getting beat up the way they are because they can't defend it, you know. And this is not a dig at Boston College. They played a good game for, they're really good at stealing the ball, and they're smaller and faster. But Boston College can't hang with. There's not a single person in the country that can hang with Liz Kitley, And so if you have to go through her by elbowing her and roughing her up, I don't understand how you have refs that are so out of the game or trying to just, let the players play, but you have girls that are getting fouls called on them for being hurt. You have girls that are taking 3 steps out of bounds and they're not getting called for being out of bounds. You have one of the best players in the country with a goose egg on her forehead, in a press conference because she took it was blatant elbow too. Like, it wasn't even a basketball play. She came down like a tomahawk. Like, she threw that John down on her face. I don't understand it. I'm glad I wasn't there. Truthfully, I one of those situations where I get myself in some trouble.
I give so much respect to Kenny because he never goes at the refs or anything. Like you saw, it was Kim Mulkey, I believe, LSU coach. She got ejected one game because she went straight at the ref in the middle of the play. And then going back to Iowa, they lost, and you hear their coach during, I believe Nebraska was the one that beat them, during their press conference. You can hear their coach complaining in the background. And Kenny, he doesn't do that. He's so calm and collected. But being in that student section, there's always one point where you kind of want to see him go off on the refs because at one point do you draw the line because she gets beat up every single game. You see it every single game, and no calls.
So pardon me for steering this conversation once again, but you talk about class, and I think that's one of the biggest things that is a draw. Obviously Virginia Tech women's basketball is phenomenal, but it always seems like our girls, our program, are doing things the right way. You have Liz Kitley, Georgia Amore, and more staying hours after the game to sign autographs for everybody who wants one. They talk about the fan base in such positive ways every time they get opportunities to. You have Coach Brooks, who is making these relationships the right way, treating the referees the right way. He's getting angry appropriately, but he's not storming out on the court getting ejected. He's not storming in on other teams' press conferences. He's not bumping refs in the middle of the championship game. But it's just one of those things that it makes you proud to be a Hokie. It makes you proud to be a part of the program. So we talk about in terms of physicality, how being physical is kind of one of those Achilles heels for Virginia Tech. Talk about a game that we lost. We lost against Duke early in January, and we have a big one coming up on Thursday against Duke in Castle. We're very quickly hit on some key points for that game and for Louisville on Sunday. And then we'll move on.
Obviously, you see how Duke plays. They press. They play great defense. We saw it down in Durham. So that's obviously going to be the biggest thing. You can't turn the ball over. You got to keep control of it. Hopefully Georgia doesn't get elbowed in the head again. Hopefully, we get a couple foul calls going our way. But, yeah, really keeping control of the ball, keeping possession. You can't turn the ball over against that team because they will capitalize. And as you saw, they smoked us down in Durham. I don't know another way to say it. They smoked us. So you can't let their physicality get in your head.
Yeah, I think it's definitely beat the press. As you said, Zach, don't let them get in your head. I think a couple things we have going for us is Castle Guard's going to show out. The public is going to show out like they always do. It's going to be jumping in there. It's going to be great. The team loves it. They feed off of it as well. I think another thing you're going to have is Kenny Brooks kind of doing his thing. It seems that, he's the coach that, looks at the first game, then looks at the second game and really comes together with a great game plan. And I think, just like we said last week, the team's getting better every single game. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of our key role players start to, come out more and give you more key points and everything else. And I think they're going to shoot a lot better. I think they didn't really shoot as great in that middle section of the game, and then without Georgia and all that. So I think you're going to see a, more gelled team and a better shooting and just a better outing from the Hokies. But yeah, obviously beat the press and just don't let them get in your head.
I think my key point was going to be beat the press as well. When I went to the game in Durham about a month ago, actually, yeah, I guess it is about a month ago to the day, and we saw very clearly that Virginia Tech was struggling to get to half court, and they were spending a lot of the shot clock in like the back third of their half court offense. They had both of their. I'm not really familiar with the type of defense that Duke runs, but they had two guards pretty much double teaming the ball carrier every time, keeping a trap, and it was really throwing Virginia Tech off. They started good. Liz was hitting her shots at the beginning. But once Duke kind of settled down into that defense, they really took care of business, and I think that's something that Virginia Tech's going to have to figure out. The other thing is that Virginia Tech has to be really, really strong in transition on defense. I don't know if you guys remember, but it seemed like every possession Duke was, they were running the floor, and they were getting layup after layup after. They were out there putting up alley-oops basically, just because they had so much space in transition. And granted, Georgia was hurt. The energy was just kind of sucked out of the team, like at the very beginning of the third. But if they can avoid turnovers and avoid putting themselves in that situation where they have to play transition defense, I think our chances are a lot better than they were in January.
Yeah, I think a key point, we always see it, Georgia is so good at beating the press. I think Tilly and Kayla being able to get that ball over half court and not turn it over, that's going to be a key point in this one. Because you saw in Boston College, Tilly actually brought it up the court a lot. It was the third quarter. Georgia, she looked a little tired. She plays 40 minutes. Her cardio is amazing. But she kind of got a break there when Tilly could take it up. So if we can see that from her and see it from Kayla, that's a bonus.
Yeah, and so I think the keys to the game are pretty self-serving. They kind of paint the picture themselves. We do have a huge game against Louisville coming up on Sunday, out in Kentucky, and that's just a Louisville team that's kind of struggled as of recently. They've lost like 2 of their last 3, I believe, including a tough one against Syracuse in the Carrier Dome, and they pretty much got drubbed by NC State in Reynolds Coliseum last Monday. We're very quickly, like, what are you looking to in that game?
I would still say the same thing, beat the press again, just because, Louisville likes to do that. We were all at the ACC championship last year, and fourth quarter, I think Louisville pressed the whole time. And at first, Tech struggled, but then they settled in. So just continue to be able to beat the press. And I think them having to do that against Duke will put them in a good place for Sunday, because they'll already had done that for one game. So I think they'll already be ready to beat the press.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree. Playing in Louisville has always been tough for the Hokies. We haven't, truthfully, I think 2 years ago was the last time we played Louisville in Kentucky, and Virginia Tech was, they were unranked and they played them tough, but Louisville was great. They were a top 10 team. It's a little bit different, and not because Louisville's worse, just because our program's in a much different spot. So I expect, or maybe not expect, but I hope that Virginia Tech comes out ready to play. I'm sure that they've gotten kind of over the road jitters that they had at the beginning of the season, and they've kind of figured it out because they just went into one of the hardest places to play in the country and took care of business. But like Collin said, it all breaks down to breaking the press, being able to set up your offense, being efficient on the offensive side of the board, or offensive side of the court. But another thing that I think is really crucial for them is to dominate the glass, like we saw in Raleigh. Um, uh, Louisville has Olivia Cochran, and if you guys aren't familiar with her, she's a force. She has been a problem against Virginia Tech for the past couple years, and she's just really, really big, really good. And if they can control her and take care of business, I expect Claire to play a lot against Louisville. I expect Liz. I mean, obviously Liz is going to play most of the game. If those two can take care of business on the glass, be able to kick the ball out and hit their shots, I expect Virginia Tech to come back to Blacksburg with a victory.
Yeah, Claire is going to be the difference maker in that one with her how she fights on the offensive rebounds. That's the big point. And you mentioned Louisville, their two losses, they're both on the road, but they beat Notre Dame at home. So that's a big difference maker for them. And their home court is pretty good, if I remember right. So our girls, they played in those atmospheres. They're gonna be fine.
Yeah. So moving on very quickly to men's basketball, it was not a good weekend for the Hokies. Pretty much any tournament hopes that Virginia Tech had going into the weekend, you could all but say that they are dashed. It was a frustrating loss to Notre Dame. Really not we didn't really see a bunch of the turnovers, so to say. It's just the Hokies went ice cold in the second half after shooting the lights out of the ball in the first. Um, you could talk about anything you want regarding the game, but the point is, we lost. We didn't take care of business against one of the worst teams in the ACC. I perused Twitter all the time, and David Cunningham was, putting out tweets about how, like, statistically, this is one of the top three worst losses of Mike Young's tenure here at Virginia Tech. And it's just something that kind of sucks the air out of the sails for the program, especially in a season where you were hoping to have a big rebound from last year. Um, I don't think we're going to spend a lot of time breaking the game down. We all saw it happen. It was frustrating losses. There wasn't much to smile about for us. But it's all hope's not lost. We have 3 big games this week. We play Florida State on Tuesday night in Castle. That's a game that the students are going to be rocking for. And then we play at Chapel Hill, a place that we haven't won at in a very long time, on Saturday. And then the big one against Virginia on Monday. We definitely won't remember Notre Dame when it comes down to it. But the one thing that we do really quickly want to talk about for just a couple minutes is the status of Mike Young in the hot seat. I'll start us off real fast, but 2 years ago after winning the ACC tournament, I did not think that we'd be having this conversation anytime soon, but 2 frustrating seasons in a row. Um, I'll give my opinion in a second, but I'm not sure what the thought is in the room.
I think last year, I guess you really want to backtrack it. A thing that we really didn't get to see is probably a full force Hokies. They were playing pretty good. Hunter got hurt, and they lost a bunch of games by, like, I don't know, a combined, what was it, 7 points or something? They had that whole spree there. Didn't really see as much of Rodney Rice. He was battling some injuries, unfortunately. I feel like one of the things that I was excited about last year is when we were in the NIT game, saw some more of Rice. He was starting to look like, he's starting to get his finger better, starting to shoot the ball. And then at the beginning of this season, just a dagger that on a random day you get a notification. Oh yeah, he's transferring, by the way. But the word behind the scene was that Tyler Nickel was going to help this team a lot. Didn't see much of him when we played Duke, which was a really big game that we probably just had right there, but just couldn't get it going. It just seems like the offensive efficiency hasn't been consistent, unfortunately, whether that's people being tired or not. But personally, I don't know. I don't think the scheme is terrible. I just think that in overall terms, I think the big thing is just recruiting. And I think we just need to see some more of that because I think we just are kind of lacking on the next step talent to if somebody's not hitting their threes, we need somebody else to kind of step in and step up. I think that's just the key that's just not there right now.
Yeah, and I gotta agree with Jackson here. I definitely, 2 years ago, Tech winning the ACC, I never would have thought we'd be sitting here having this conversation right now. But I think, like Zach said, he just needs to recruit better. Like I don't really know what the issue is there, but I think what's going to be big in this offseason is he really needs to try to hit the portal hard. Try to get at least one, possibly two big transfers. I mean, at least even one. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if Padula leaves, which then would make Rodney Rice transferring hurt even more. But I think the portal this offseason is going to be huge.
And you just really need someone who could drive, who could put their head down, drive to the bucket. That ACC tournament team, Hunter Couture got hot. Darius Maddox hit the miracle buzzer beater. Without that, I don't know where this program would be. Because if Maddox misses that shot, we lose in the first round. And how many seasons is that missing the tournament in a row? I think that saved Mike Young's job. And it's going to be a hard conversation in the offseason to see if we keep him. I mean, yeah, it's unfair with Rodney Rice. We thought he was going to be a star this year, and that really threw a wrench in the plan. But you got to adjust, and you don't see the adjustments being made.
Kind of in my opinion, I obviously it's really easy to put the blame on the leader in these situations. But let's think about like the history of Virginia Tech recently. Mike comes in 2019, 2020. That season's cut short due to COVID, but Virginia Tech lost basically all of their talent to the portal when Buzz left. We were left with Wabisa Bidi and PJ Horn. And, basically, we had a Naheem Aline starting as what should have been a high school senior, right? And we had a pretty rough season that year. But that's acceptable. It's acceptable into the first year. We come out the next year, we beat Villanova right away, and we spend basically the entire season ranked within the top 15 to 20. We have a rough go with it due to COVID. We play like 2 games in like a month and a half, and we can't get the rhythm going. So we lose to North Carolina in the ACC tournament, and then we lose again to Florida in round 1 of the national tournament. But definitely not Mike Young wins ACC Coach of the Year that year. Definitely not a bad season by any means. Another tournament appearance after it seemed like all hope was lost after Buzz left. The next season we have high hopes. We don't start great. We start 2-7 from in ACC play, and it takes Charlie Moore buzzer beater to kind of turn the ship around and turn the luck around for us in Blacksburg. We go on a run. That run wasn't just a fluke, like we lost 1 game the rest of the season to North Carolina in Castle and Clemson, 2 games. So we went 9-2 down the stretch with a team that was playing good basketball. We got over the Clemson hump after playing them twice in a row to beat them in round 1 of the ACC tournament. Go on a run. We all know what happens there. We win the ACC tournament. We lose to Texas, a Texas team that shot their best 3-point percentage of the entire season against us. Shocker. It's kind of that typical Virginia Tech thing where you run into a buzzsaw, right? So you can't really call that season a failure. You hang a banner, you get a tournament appearance. Unfortunate the way it ends, but definitely not something that you can hang your head on. You come into last year, and it doesn't go the way you want. You lose Storm Murphy, you lose Keve Aluma. You retain Justin Mutz and Hunter Couture. Sean Padula plays big minutes, and it's kind of what you see this year, where it's turnovers and frustrating basketball, and you can't buy shots. It's inefficient, inconsistent shooting. Basili was huge for us as a transfer, and And it's frustrating because you want to improve, but it didn't go the way you want. So that's one bad season. Then you have another one. You have another one right here. And during this season, and I don't know, guys. I don't know. I don't think it's time to fire him because I don't think it's his fault. But it's one of those conversations that you have to find. You have to have. So we're going to quickly move away from Mike Young on the hot seat. I think all of us here we love Mike. We would rather him be the coach, but we have to have success. We have to be playing good basketball. So we're all hoping that turns around here this off season. We're hoping we get some big portal additions. We have Ryan Jones come in. He's a huge recruit for us. Things aren't looking awful for Virginia Tech, but it's something that has to shift. So this last weekend was an opening weekend for softball, and it was a huge weekend for the Hokies. We played down in Auburn, Alabama. We got to play games against Illinois, Belmont, and, of course, the Auburn Tigers. Went 4-0 and 1 on the season. In reality, it's 5-0. Hokie Nation knows that it's 5-0. You guys watched a lot of softball. I had a busy weekend here in Chesapeake, so you guys are going to go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, I can start on this one. This year, we lost a lot of talent from last year. Kelsey Bennett, Kelsey Brown, and Jamie Bailey. So those are key spots right there: first base, third base, and an outfield spot that you got to fill. So you had some question marks coming into the year, and they got answered quick. Rachel Castine broke out. She hit 4 home runs, I think 2 grand slams, including one of them against Auburn. And Auburn is not a bad team at all. They had the reigning SEC Pitcher of the Year. And they were 1 seed away from hosting last year. They were the 17. They went to Clemson. So that is a very good team. We got a huge home run in that first game, and it was tied 1-1, and then we exploded in extras. And then destroyed Belmont. And then played Auburn again, where we all know we got screwed. Bree Peck hit that grand slam. And then they want to complain about the rain. So, Zach, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, I'll keep it quick. Like Jackson, I also had a kind of busy weekend, but I was able to sit down and watch that Auburn game. It was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The Auburn would take the lead, but the girls would kind of fight through the rain, unlike the other team, I guess. And they would keep it right then and there. And then the 6th inning comes around, they load the base up, and Bree Peck is up to bat. And as soon as that ball was thrown, by the time she brought her bat back, she was either crushing it or she was missing. It wasn't going to be a foul, wasn't going to be anything else. That ball was gone if she made contact, and sure enough, that thing was gone. Outfielder just kind of took a couple steps back, realized it was gone, nothing you could do about it. And they put 2 more on after that. 0 outs to this point, by the way. And then next thing you know, they call the game. I don't know how long that delay was, but we kind of went and got dinner after that. So unfortunately, it was a tie. They definitely won, though, in just about mathematical standpoint, technically. So whatever you want to say with that. But Collin, you got anything you want to add with that?
I was just gonna say I think it's funny, ironic, whatever you want to say. When Auburn was playing well, their coach didn't seem to mind the rain, but the second Tech starts putting it on them, the rain's an issue now. It's dangerous to play, and we got to cancel the rest of the game. That's a little bit ridiculous. And like we already said, everybody knows that Tech got screwed. They went 5-0 this weekend.
But just real quickly though, I know me and Zach were talking about kind of how they were going to look this year. As he said, those questions got answered, but I'm not sure how many runs they actually put up this weekend, but it was a lot. And I think that jumping from 24 to 16 in the rankings after just one opening weekend, I think that this team is going to do a lot of fun and exciting stuff this year. So really excited for it.
Yeah, we scored statistically, like officially, we scored 50 runs. We all know that's 54. I think it's interesting. I don't know if you guys saw this on Twitter, but Auburn was, they're kind of praising the rain when they took the lead 5-4. They're on Twitter saying like, the rain doesn't stop us. The rain's not the only thing that's falling today. Talking about hidden bombs, and sure enough, the Auburn officials are the ones that decide to call the game once they're down 9-5. It's frustrating because in softball, in sports that you don't really get a lot of coverage, you have to have these big wins to move up in the rankings, because these people that do these rankings, you kind of see it in women's too. They kind of just look at final scores. Like there's not many people that are going to be making these polls, that are going to be looking at the breakdown of these games. Granted, I think we kind of made a big enough deal about it that it didn't hurt us too bad. Um, but you sweep a higher ranked team on the road in a true road game, and you beat them. You beat them by a lot. We beat them 8-1 in the first game after putting 7 runs up in the 8th, and then you have a grand slam when you're about to put more. Those are big things that needed to happen for Virginia Tech, just for the national coverage of our Hokies. And it's frustrating that it didn't happen just because you're afraid to get a little wet, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm being shallow thinking about it, but I know Pete Demore and the rest of the Hokies were not happy about it, but I'm sure they're happy with the way that they are playing starting the season.
So here's what I don't understand about it. I understand logistics. There was one of the freshmen, I believe it was, I don't know her name yet. She slid into second, and you just see the mud coat her pants, and she's laughing about it. It was pouring. But we played the next day down in Auburn against Illinois. Why can't you just play that inning? I don't understand. Like, I understand there's logistics. I know you have to travel. It's not like you're playing another game. You're just playing one inning. Finish it. Give us our win. Like, I don't understand. But I do think the major point right there is not only do you get the breakouts from Castine, we know we're getting from Peck. That girl can destroy the ball. But I think the pitchers, too. It was mainly Limley last year. Grind, she pitched really well for a freshman. And seeing her improvement was amazing. She pitched that first game against Auburn, held them to that 1 run. And seeing the improvement that she made, but also the transfer, I think it's Cassidy Grizzard. She's a lefty. And that's something that's not big in softball. You don't see many lefties. And when you do, they're dominant. I know Oklahoma had a good lefty. So having that depth at pitching, that is huge for softball, because you normally just see one pitcher go out, and she goes out there every game, and she dominates. When you have 3 that can pitch, and they all give a different component, Limley, she throws that rise ball up in the zone. I didn't watch much of Grizzard, but it seemed like she had a nasty drop ball from that left side. Our softball is going to be good this year. They're going to be really good.
That's one of those things that I fully believe. Being 5 hours away now, it's kind of one of those things that you get past basketball season, and now you're looking for excuses to come back to Blacksburg. And I can honestly say that we're excited to come watch some softball this year. It's we are anxiously awaiting for the return of the Hokies to Tech Softball Park once it gets a little bit warmer. But for the time being, there's a lot of softball to be played. The outlook is good for the Hokies. We have, a bunch of talent on the team, but it's something that's we're really excited for moving forward. Can't wait for them to get back to Blacksburg so we can cheer on the Hokies. Speaking of teams that we are excited to see back in Blacksburg, we have the return to English Field this weekend for the baseball team against Charlotte. Carson DiMartini, Chris Canizero back for the Hokies. Speaking of teams that we're excited to get back to business here this spring, the return of Tech baseball comes this upcoming weekend on the road at the University of Charlotte. We have returning stars Chris Canizero, Carson DiMartini, Garrett Michelle. We have some kids that can rake, kids that can play some damn good baseball. We're excited for them. It's a season kind of unknowns, kind of like 2 years ago where they were kind of ranked at the bottom of the ACC Coastal, and John Sheff and staff and the rest of the Hokies have proved that they can ignore those preseason expectations and come out on top. So we're excited to see them this upcoming weekend at the University of Charlotte, and then back in Blacksburg the weekend after. We also had some lax action, Zach.
Yeah, our women's lax team, they played VCU, their home opener, and they beat them 10-5. So I know DeGrauwe and I were excited to go watch some lacrosse this year. We're not too knowledgeable in the game, but we're ready to learn it.
Also want to say for the baseball team, Clay Grady breakout year.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that too. I think Clay Grady's going to have a good year. Little Suffolk, Virginia.
5-7er. Clay Grady breakout year.
So that's about going to wrap us up here on the second episode of Exit Light. Thank you to all of you who have chosen to tune in and give us a listen. We're hoping that this gets up on Spotify and your other podcast platforms soon, but we are definitely going to be up on YouTube as soon as we possibly can. We're looking forward to another set of big games here in Blacksburg and across the country. Big games for women's basketball. Softball is on the road. We're hoping for a little bit of a turnaround for men's. Baseball, lacrosse, all turning up here in the spring. So thank you guys. Keep going to games. Keep being loud for the Hokies. My name's Jackson Tate, and I'm here with Collin, Zach, and the other Zach, and we will see you next time.